In the instruction manual, installing the landing gear on the Viper is the fifth and last step of the main construction. However, I like to work with the wing free from the fuselage when installing the landing gear. And here we have what I consider an excellent design. I'm very impressed with it. It's a small detail, but usually you just have a line and then a strap that goes over your fixed landing gear. Here, the landing gear goes to the outside. It fits into a hard plastic molded piece. There are two spots for screws. You can see I have one screw in there already because I am establishing the screw lines, the grooves for the screws before mounting the gear. This one up here is for the wing rod and it secures it, but we'll get to that in a bit. But here's what's really impressive about this, and that is instead of a simple strap that goes across the bar, we have a molded piece that helps hold the entire landing gear strut, the bend and all that, in place down inside the slot. So I'll remove the screw, install this, and be back in a moment. I have completed the installation of the main landing gear on this wing. Again, the strut went in, has a nice bend down it. This molded plug fits in on top of it, securing it in place inside the slot. There's no rattle, there's no looseness, and then it's secured in place with the two screws. I probably didn't need to pre-install the screws to get my grooves in there, but I did it because that's the way I handle these things, because you never know when you're going to have soft screws. The screws here are both in perfect shape. Everything is installed. This landing gear is done. I'll now repeat the process with the other wing half. Step 1 in the instruction manual and step 2 in my assembly is installing the horizontal stabilizer and elevators. As you can see, they come with the servos installed and the control arms already connected, control rods connected to the control arms on the elevators, so it's ready to go. It has the two wires going into one with a long extension that will go into this hole here, which has the wire for the rudder, and then we'll go down into the fuselage and plug in to an extension in there. Notice that there's a very defined molded shape on the tail of the fuselage and on the underside of our horizontal stabilizer. This will allow for it to properly line up, no question of doing it right. And there are two screws that hold it in place. The longer one goes in front, the shorter one in back. I will install it except for getting the wire in at this time. I have installed the screws, the horizontal stabilizer is installed, the 18mm screw went in front, the 15 in back. There's very little actual screw inside the mount, so it's important that you get those right. They only fit one way. So the slightly longer one in front, shorter one in back, it makes for a firm, nicely mounted stabilizer. My next step is to get this wire in through this foam tunnel into the fuselage so that I can move it forward and connect it up eventually with the receiver through an extension wire already in the fuselage. However, my attempts to just force it through this foam tunnel have led to only go so far and then it stops because of a block. I've been able at times to push it further forward, but I don't want to play with this game. So I'm going to get a piano wire and bring that through and connect it and pull the wire through. So that's what I'll be doing next. Okay, I've run the piano wire through the foam tube, and as you can see, it comes out here. And I have taped the servo wire from the elevators to the piano wire. I will align it sideways and pull it through right here. There it stopped. Now we'll have to go to pulling on the piano wire, and I'll be back in a moment. With the elevator wire installed into the fuselage, I've run the wing rod into the fuselage. It will go into the wing and it will line up with this hole where I will insert a screw. Now, there's a hole on the underside of the wing rod right there that lines up with that hole and secures the wing to the wing rod, and with both wings in, the wings to the fuselage. Here you see the hole on the wing rod that will line up with the hole out here to secure the wing rod into the wing. You see the two molded pieces on the wing that fit into two molded inserts here on the fuselage that allow for it to line up and be properly set in place. There's also a hole back here for the wire from the aileron. So we will start inserting that and get that in so that it matches the length of the wing rod, and then continue to push the wing towards the fuselage. Here we see the wing almost fully inserted, the wire in the hole, the wing rod in place, the molded foam pieces fitting into the spaces inside the fuselage. With the wing fully inserted on the wing rod and into the fuselage, the moment of truth will be if this screw goes through that hole and into the wing rod. The reason this screw fitting is critical is that I've already installed this wing half, and I had secured the wing rod in place with this screw by measuring it, holding my thumb on the wing rod, sliding it in place, and inserting the screw, and that worked fine. Now we have our moment of truth. I had to set the camera down while I used the screwdriver because I'm working here alone, but the screw fit perfectly. The wing is now fully assembled onto the fuselage. The landing gear is installed. My next step will be installing the rudder, which is step 2 in the instruction manuals, installing the vertical stabilizer and rudder. And the final step will be installing the nose gear. Installing the vertical stabilizer rudder involves fitting it into this support. A screw goes in from each side to secure it in the center, and one screw goes in from the front tongue into the fuselage. But before we put in any screws, we will plug this wire into the servo extension for the rudder, and we will secure it in place so that it won't come loose at any time, because we don't have to try to reconnect these wires for any reason in the future. So again, this will fit right here in this slot, and I'll be back in a moment. The wire has been connected, installed, and pulled forward. This is the rudder extension wire, and we have carefully fitted it in the slot on both sides. We have 3 screws, 2 that are somewhat fatter there, and a thinner one. This one goes in the front, these 2 go on the side, and we'll be back in a minute when they've been installed. I've installed the 3 screws, the one there, and one on the opposite side. So the vertical stabilizer is now secured in place. The wire runs forward. The rudder servo will operate. Now it's on to installing the nose wheel, the receiver, and the battery. And I didn't bring the right size hex wrench, so the nose wheel will be going on at home.
Right there, baby.
The last formal step of assembly of the kit was securing the nose gear. I needed an Allen wrench to fit the nut right there. That's been tightened in place. There's a servo in the fuselage to steer it, connected with the rudder. And so we have 2 servos, one in the tail for the rudder and one up front. Just want to make sure that they're properly aligned for taxiing and flying. With the kit fully assembled, I installed the receiver. As stated previously, the only hard part was getting the elevator wires through this foam tube. Once I got them forward, I was able to pull them out, connect with a servo extension, which was up to the front here. So I have aileron, elevator, throttle, and rudder control. The rudder controls both the rudder and, with this servo, the steering. The battery tray is quite large. Using a 6X, I understand with a 6S you'd be further back this way. With the 4S, I have the battery more forward as I need the weight to help counteract the weight of the motor and fan in the back. So I've got it balanced right now for 85 millimeters. I'll probably be moving it back just slightly to balance that, or actually putting it forward just slightly to balance at 75 millimeters to avoid some of the bounce in the landing. The recommended center of gravity point is 85 millimeters back, which is just about here. I'm going to be going a little bit further forward at 80 to 75 millimeters for my center of gravity. The 4S 75mm Viper, imported by Banana Hobby, fully assembled and ready to fly.